On February 15, 1898, the USS Maine explodes in Cuba's Havana Harbor. By 1898, the US had become an industrial power and had begun building an overseas empire through the annexation of Hawaii. Conversely, the Great Spanish Empire, established in the Age of Exploration and once the mightiest in the world, was in decay. By 1898, most of Spain's overseas possessions had either won independence or fallen into the hands of others. The Cuban people were in revolt, fighting Spain for independence. To protect U.S. interests in Cuba, U.S. President William McKinley sent the USS Maine to Havana Harbor. A massive explosion of unknown origin sank the $2 million battleship, killing 260 of the 355 on board. Yellow journalism, a style of reporting that uses sensationalism to attract readers and sales, was vibrant in America at the time. Two newspapers, Joseph Pulitzer's New York World and William Randolph Hearst's New York Journal, were the leaders of this type of journalism. This yellow press, without evidence, placed blame for the USS Maine's explosion on Spain. This incited public outrage, leading the U.S. to declare war with "Remember the Maine" as a rallying cry. The declining Spanish Empire stood little chance against the emerging might of the United States. The fighting lasted only a few months. When the smoke cleared, Cuba had won independence, and Spain had lost what was left of her American and Asian empires. The U.S. gained Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. U.S. Ambassador to Britain John Hay called it a splendid little war. In the aftermath of the war, the Philippines wanted what Cuba wanted: independence. But the U.S. refused. In fact, the U.S. sent troops to force the islands to submit. It is not America's proudest moment. You could certainly argue that the move was antithetical to the U.S.'s core principles of democracy and basic human rights. But during the age of imperialism, the U.S. felt that controlling the Philippines as a gateway to trade with China superseded the Filipinos' basic rights, and the Philippines became a U.S. territory. About 40 years later, during World War II, Japan attacked the U.S.-controlled Philippines just hours after Pearl Harbor. Filipino troops fought alongside American soldiers to defend the islands throughout the war. It was after World War II in 1946 that the U.S. finally granted the Philippines independence. The U.S. has dozens of overseas cemeteries from the World Wars, most of them in Europe. But the largest of those overseas cemeteries is located in Manila. It is a beautiful memorial to both American and Filipino soldiers, including those who died during the infamous Bataan Death March. Another important development from the Spanish-American War was that it pushed Theodore Roosevelt into the public eye. When the war broke out, Roosevelt was serving as Assistant Secretary of the Navy. He resigned and organized a volunteer cavalry unit known as the Rough Riders, who famously charged up Cuba's San Juan Hill. Just months after the battle, Roosevelt was elected as governor of New York. After 2 years in office, he became U.S. Vice President. 6 months later, President McKinley was assassinated, making Theodore Roosevelt the 26th President of the United States. It was a meteoric rise that took him from Assistant Secretary of the Navy to the presidency in just over 3 years. At the tender age of 42, Roosevelt is still the youngest president in U.S. history, although not the youngest ever elected president. That honor belongs to 43-year-old John F. Kennedy. The mast of the USS Maine can be found today at Arlington National Cemetery. It is located near the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and the memorials to those killed in the Iran embassy rescue attempt and the crews of the space shuttles Challenger and Columbia. Here are other events that happened today in history. In 1851, 20 black abolitionists storm a Boston courthouse and rescue fugitive slave Shadrach Minkins. In 1950, the Soviet Union and the People's Republic of China sign a mutual defense and assistance treaty. Also in 1950, Disney's animated feature Cinderella opens in theaters across the United States. In 1961, the entire 18-member U.S. figure skating team is killed in a plane crash in Brussels, Belgium. In 1965, Canada formally adopts the red and white maple leaf flag as its official national flag. In 1984, Matt and Ross Duffer, the creators of the series Stranger Things, are born in North Carolina. In 2024, Iowa's Caitlin Clark breaks the NCAA women's basketball all-time scoring record. And now, it's time for our Today in History quiz. How many of the 11 Confederate states seceded from the United States before Abraham Lincoln was sworn in as president? 5, 7, 9, or 11? Think you know the answer? Drop your guesses in the comments below. Find out if you're right tomorrow on Today in History.